Welcome, Carolyn, from, well, this sort of rainy, dark London to sunny, LA. So lovely to see you and to have you here.
Thank you, Alina. Same. I won't make you jealous about the weather, but yes, it is wonderful to be in Los Angeles right now.
And I have to say, I've been looking forward to this. You and I talked about this almost beginning of the year. So I've been very patient to have you on my LinkedIn Live before the end of the year. And I think this is number 23. Can you believe it? So it's been quite an audacious project, and I'm really proud and really looking forward to having this conversation with you, but which will take us anywhere. You and I were talking just very briefly. I think for me, the intention was to talk about all things audacious, which is courage, care, nonconformity, and have fun.
Yes.
And go with the flow.
All in.
Go with the flow. So why don't we just start with, tell the audience, whoever's here and whoever will join us later, something audacious about you.
Something audacious about me. Something audacious about me was that at 21, when I was walking at Tower Records, there used to be record shops then in the late 70s, early 80s. I ran into a famous newsman, a celebrity of sorts, and I mean, not of sorts, a big celebrity. And he was over twice my age. And I knew that I had to find him and tell him that I thought he was the greatest guy in the world. I canvassed the city, I found him, and we were then in a relationship for 3 years after that.
Wow.
That's something audacious.
Totally audacious. And actually, it took me because you did live a very audacious life since then, I suppose.
Yes. What drew me to your concept before your book came out, because we were both in 4PC together and you were talking about it, was that word has been so charged for me from the time I was a child. When I was a child, I didn't know the word audacious, and I didn't know what it even meant, or all the, ways people thought about it, all the connotations it carried. As I grew older and continued to just live my life, I suppose with audacity, then it became more complicated. In that I understood that, most people don't really think it's such a great thing. And, it actually makes my life more complicated. And, maybe I shouldn't be so audacious. Like, I thought it was a great thing, but maybe it's not. Now, of course, looking back decades later, and with the understanding that you have put forward in your book, I'm looking at it again as something very positive.
Thank you for that. That sort of warmed my heart, because my mission is definitely to portray it as definitely a positive spin, if you like, on audacity, because it's both, like everything else in life, interestingly. Yes. But I think, not to be seen as, she or he had the audacity to do it in a negative way, but actually seeing both sides of that concept.
Yes, agreed.
So, but I know you, you took us into the book, and I am really impressed that you did read the book, or listen to it rather. We're talking about the cadence of the narrator, but was there any part of that book that resonated more with you than others?
I would say that I was really taken with the attunement chapter, because that really spoke to me as a leader, and it speaks to me. You know that so much of my work is with young adults now, and attunement is the quality that they need the most help with. And so the way you shine a light on it, and also attunement is so connected to care, which is the piece of being daring and being audacious that was missing. I wouldn't say entirely missing for me. I'm a caring person, but it was missing in my behavior in my younger years, so that, my audaciousness was many times put forth in the world with a lack of care, or it appeared that way. So, my favorite is the way you've woven caring with daring uh, throughout the whole book. And it just keeps coming up and making me think, yeah, you certainly could have been more caring. Yeah, you could have been more caring in this way. Yes, you've become more caring, which is why you're still audacious, but also life just has more ease, has a more easeful quality to it now. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Makes perfect sense. And for me, the whole concept of adding this extra dimension to Audacity, because, most people know Audacity for the boldness, someone who's bold, who's
Yes.
definitely the non-conformity, less so for the caring part. And so for me, it was really important to add that dimension and bring it in, as you need to be caring to be audacious. And, sometimes provocatively, when you care so much about that someone or something that you don't care about what other people think. So it's the paradox in that
Yes, exactly.
statement. But I would love you just mention that, and I know of you, the extraordinary work that you do with young adults as well as, not so young adults, but I'm particularly interested in the young adults piece because of, being, you and I are both mothers of young adults now. And this concept of radical responsibility, which for me, there is a link with the young adults, and how do we teach them to be radically responsible. So I'm very curious as to your take on that and how you use it in your work.
Yeah. So I'm a very accidental, shall we say, coach to young adults. Raising my own two kids by myself, never for a moment did I think there would be a time in my life that I would be coaching, helping, advising young adults, because raising my own two just seemed so difficult. And it seemed more often I thought I was doing the wrong thing than the right thing. So to be in this position now, which happened because, I would be coaching my regular clients and leaders. And as you know, the kind of coaching you and I do, that transformational coaching, doesn't matter if you enter through the door of business or personal, it all ends up, you have to touch every part of someone's life, right? So soon enough, if they were parents, the children would come up and their issues with the kids. And, they would say, hey, will you talk to my kid? Well, the kid was 22, 24, 26, 28, 32. And the main issue was that they weren't going out into the world in the way that we would want them to, in the way they would want to for themselves. And so that's how this whole sort of focus of mine began, was quite accidentally. And then now, people talk to each other and it's become a thing. Radical responsibility, I think it applies to all of us. But because you asked about the young adults, where they are not, the reason they're not showing up, one of the reasons they're not showing up for themselves, is they have yet to take full responsibility for their own lives. So that doesn't, there's a lot of blame. There's the climate, and there's, things were easier with their parents, and there's politics. And, the truth is that we have all had, and our grandparents and our great grandparents, we have all had issues that we've had to deal with in our lives. And none of us has been able to step forward into full adulthood. It's not an age thing. Because we have 40, 50, 70-year-old children walking the planet. By full adulthood, I mean, this is my life. I may not have caused the circumstances of it, but I am responsible for it.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. It's as simple as that. Because radical responsibility sounds like, oh, a big thing. It's really that simple, that to move away from blaming the economy, blaming your parents, blaming. And it doesn't mean that everything is perfect, but to say from today on, it's on me. It's on me to show up a certain way, to behave a certain way, to keep my agreements, to express my emotions, to be audacious.
Mm. Yes. And actually you reminded me, because if you might not remember, but in my book, in the early chapters of acknowledgement, I
Yes.
use that, sort of the drama triangle model, a
Yes.
Carmen's model, which is very famous in the sort of, therapy world. It's we all play a role in our lives. And one is victim, as you just talked about, when we just, or one is a persecutor, which tends to blame everybody else. And then we have the rescuer. Or the savior, which is what I'm guilty of.
But here's the thing: there is a generation that's pitched a tent and is living in victim. So we all move through those three characters, right? It's very helpful to know, who am I being right now?
Mm-hmm.
But this generation, so many of the young people are caught in a dynamic of parents are rescuers and they're helpless victims. And us as parents have contributed greatly to that. They didn't show up that way for no reason. It's because we have rescued them since day one. So this is the dynamic that they are accustomed to.
Totally. And it's so true. It feels very true. And, my own relationship with my two children, I think this new generation of adults, i.e., us as parents, have created so much of that reality. In providing them with so much more than we had, in a way. So, and I'm talking for myself, just being a rescuer. And, for me, it's also linked to this inability to say no. So I say yes when I'm asked. So I rescue, which is definitely something that I've been working on over the last few years or so. But that's a sort of triangle, as I call it, of responsibility. Are you able to turn it on its head and take responsibility for whichever of those characters that you find yourself in, and break through it? And for me, the responsibility word, I always, when I refer to it in my workshops, as breaking it into the two words, constituency words, response and ability. So it's our ability to respond to what's in front of us.
That's right. Well, in the book, you talk about, again, this was one of the earlier chapters where you talk about the difference between responding and reacting, right, to a situation. Our young people don't know that distinction. And because another thing we've done, our generation, because, and it was reactive to the way we were raised, where nobody cared really how we felt, right? We've been asking our kids since day one, like, how do you feel? How do you feel? How do you feel? So there is this kind of myth around your emotions being the most important decision maker, of your life as you move forward. And it's just simply not true. We know this as adults, that you can feel a certain way and still have to do what is required in that moment. That is radical responsibility. Like, being able to hold your feelings and hold space for your feelings and those of others, and still do what needs to be done, what the moment requires. Be responsive in the way that moves you forward in life. So, yeah, you're absolutely right. Your responsibility is your responsibility. Yeah.
And stay in action, as you actually said. So, rather than it just keep moving forward, rather than being, taken over by those emotions sometimes. And, there is a lot of avoidance I'm finding in that sort of younger generation, which is interesting, again, breaking the avoidance towards certain things and staying in action. For me, and I'm talking for my own self, I have this mindset of experimentation. And I just want to experiment. There is no failure. It's just the feedback. It's just an opportunity. I keep talking about that. It's just, let's try, and if it doesn't work, we'll find something else. But that's much more difficult, I find. And again, without generalizing, I think for the newer generation, there is a lot, the whole social media and the pressure of performing and comparing, and it's huge.
That's right. And again, so many of us, I don't want to beat up on us as parents, but so many of us didn't show what it takes. We just showed the final product, and they're like, oh, that's how it's supposed to be. It's, they didn't see the how difficult it was. I mean, when I listen to the book, and I see what you've gone through, and now your son is 20. How old is your daughter?
17.
17. Did they ever see what it took for you to be the incredible, powerful, successful professional that you are? I don't know.
It's an interesting question. Well, I mean, I would argue that they did, only because, I was a single mum for most of their lives. And I think what they've seen is it's really this sort of workaholic almost, me working to provide, the sort of provider in a way, to an extreme. I think but again, the fact that they didn't have to, and it was provided for them, it's a big distinction compared to, how I grew up.
We grew up in a generation where we got the message that not only we as women should do it all, but we should make it look easy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, you may be too young to remember. There was a commercial for Calgon, like bath soap or something like that, where, or no, there was this one where she was like, she'd come home in her suit and she's like, I can make a dinner and I can do this and I can look fabulous for my husband. I was like, I don't know, 8 years old when I was watching that. I was like, oh, okay, so that's how it's supposed to be. We're supposed to be all of those things and make it look fabulous and make it look easy. Well, we did. And our children are a little confused. They're like, wait, how do you do that? Because, we paid a price for it. We paid a price for it very quietly, and it's very deep. So, it helps when I share with my young clients as a proxy for their parents, when I share my, doubts and my challenges as I was creating first a life, professionally in luxury, and now as a coach. And I encourage them to have those conversations with their parents and draw out of their parents their challenges. How did they get to where they got to? And their grandparents. That's the other thing. This generation doesn't really know their grandparents. Almost none of us had grandparents that had it easy. But we don't know their stories because we're all moving fast forward. So anyway, I could talk for days about the young adult thing.
But it's fascinating, actually, and it is. And you just reminded me, one of the things you write in terms of this dynamic between parent and children. But I've just encountered this dynamic in the workplace with, a boss and a direct report. And it's an interesting, because for me, that I'm questioning, yes, but this new generation, they haven't experienced it, the hard way that we did. And there was the same argument that the boss used for the direct report. So the boss, and this is a sales team, for argument's sake, in financial services here in London. But the boss will say, well, I had to do a lot of cold calling, 20 years ago. That was, so the way I build this business, the way is I did a lot of that. So, the real hard core, and she, because it was she, was expecting the same of the direct report, which was another she. And the dynamic has changed. The person doesn't need to do cold calling anymore, interestingly, because, that business has been built. There is a different type of skill. And it made me think about, wow, it's an interesting dynamic. But again, for us, children and parents, they don't need to do it the way we did it. There is a different skill.
That's right. So when parents say, oh, well, because these are, my group are kids that come from luxury. I mean, come from privilege. That's just the truth. Unless I'm doing pro bono work. So the parents say, well, what am I supposed to do? Like make them do chores and make them, it all seems very artificial. It's not that, in my opinion anyway, because there's a lot of experts that say, absolutely, you got to make them do things and earn things. That's great, but that's not the main piece for me. The main piece is communicating the values, you know, communicating the family values since they're young. We have been afraid to do that because we're like, oh my God, if I say this, will it be, you know, am I stepping on identity politics? If I say that, is it, I mean, you have a child who's on the autism spectrum. You must know it's just loaded. This idea of what you say or don't say, or what others say or don't say. So we've just been very quiet around values. Letting them, okay, we'll just let them decide when they grow older. They will decide when they grow older. But if we don't give them a base, a fundamental base of, in this family, kindness comes first. In this family, we work to earn whatever it is that's important to you. In this family, we observe traditions. So this is my very strong personal belief based on working with young people, that we've given them great deal of resources, but we have not made their values and their priorities clear for them through our own actions. We've been like, whatever you want, you know, whatever you feel like is okay.
Yeah, and you and I, you're right. We could debate this a lot because that's created a lot of confusion. So, you know, no wonder they need to be supported. No wonder they need to have that clarity around, you know, what's the values that they want to subscribe to for
and
themselves.
Courage, which is something, courage is also, clarity and courage are the two things that come up most in my work.
Yeah, well, I can probably most people. I mean, for me, that's obviously the central pillar. I always say that's what I do for a living, is give people courage. But it's about encouraging. You know, for children, it's using that verb. You know, you need to encourage them so they believe they can do it. You know, it's clarity. But one of the things I love to explore is, we've got a little bit more time, is you know, because we've touched. I think on in the book, and you and I were talking just before we started, my default has always been yes, which has got me into a lot of trouble. So that's my assurance chapter. And then the assertiveness chapter is it's the you know, courage to say no, which I think I, you know, define it as having, you know, more courageous than saying yes is saying no. And I think, well, you divulge, you lead with a no, where I lead with a yes. So I'm curious, because I think we've got a lot to learn from each other. But how does that show up, and what's the pros and the cons of leading with a no?
You know, in your book, you talk about courage, care, and nonconformity being these sort of three pillars. And I wish that my default to no came from courage or even care, even though there were elements of both of those. I have deeply cared for myself from a young age. So, you know, so saying no to keep my own space safe has been a good thing. But mostly it's come from nonconformity. You know, any of these tests I take, I show up as the rebel. And, you know, you and I think we're both 8s in the Enneagram, right? So it's just like, it's a little bit ridiculous, you know, to say no just for the sake of it. And that's at the core of why that default began. But it has good things, but it has had some really big trade-offs, negative trade-offs that, you know, over the years, by learning to infuse more care into my no, more consciousness, more thoughtfulness, consider the yes before you say no, all the things you talk about, I think I'm finding that sweet spot that makes me happy. And that sweet spot is what I think about a lot as I was reading your book, you know, because all the qualities you talk about, they all have a shadow side. So it's all about dialing it into what is just that sweet spot for you, right? That sweet
Mm,
spot of assertiveness, of authenticity, of, you know, attunement. Um, although it seems to me attunement, you should be 100% at it. But some of these others really, it's all about finding that right space. Now, no has served me, like my ability to say no um, has served me in ways as well that are just really valuable. You know,
mm,
when I say yes, and be careful, because when you say no to things, fewer people will ask you for things and will invite you to things and will include you in things. So anything I'm about to say that's a positive, there is, you know, the sort of negative to it too. When I say yes, though, people are delighted. They know I mean it. They know it's meaningful. They know I really want to. They know it's heartfelt. Nobody ever thinks that I'm doing something for them because I have to. Like, it doesn't
mm.
even occur to them. Not my kids, not my family, not my friends. Nobody ever thinks that, because I just don't say yes for to please.
And I think that's a beauty, actually, to get. And you're right. I mean, the sweet spot, I now call it the sweet zone, because it's a big range of whatever that is for each and every one of us. But I think it's for me, this is realizing that I have led all my life with a yes, which really served me too. I mean, for me, everything is an opportunity, and I jump in, first, and I love to do it, and it then overstretches me. So,
Yeah,
finding that zone, as you said, where, when I say yes, people know I really mean it, rather than I doing it from a place of pleasing. I think that is very powerful and very impactful. And it's interesting. The one book I'm reading right now is called, actually, it's Gabor Mate, when the body says no. I don't know if
yes.
you read, because I mean that, wow, it struck such a chord with me, because when we lose this ability to say no, we haven't even learned it, possibly, like me, is there's going to be a moment when the body will say no for us, you know
That's
uh,
right.
through
Right.
illness.
That's right. And this is what I meant by saying that so much of my default to no does have to do with care
Hmm.
for myself. From a very young age, I could see, I could feel that people were not well or getting sick. And, you know, it was long before Gabor Mate and all the knowledge that we have today. I just intuited what now I know to be 100% true, which is that if you don't protect your physical body, and your physical body is limited, your
Hmm.
energy, like, it's not endless. You know, you give to one thing, that means you don't give to another. You know, I understood I need my time in nature. I understood I need sleep, a lot of it. Um, that if I don't do that, I'm going to get sick, like the people around me who are sick and don't know why.
Mm. Yeah. And
That's the care piece.
that is a care piece. And for me, I think that's, which is interesting for me, I because I led with caring for others, I sort of took responsibility for others, and in that process I sort of lost the care for self. This is
Uh,
where I've found it, or rediscovered it, for the last few years. Is like, it's really important. It's finding that balance, as you said, the dance between caring for self and caring for others, but for self first, for sure. And I have to relearn that.
yeah. I think it could get confusing though if you see it as this dichotomy, caring for self versus for others,
Mm,
you know?
mm,
And that's what has gotten in the way for so many people I work with, is thinking that it's kind of hierarchical. If I care for self, that means I don't care for others. I don't think that's true. I don't think about it that way. I think they live in two different worlds. And if I need to care for myself, it doesn't mean I care less for you. It just means I can't be available in this moment.
A fabulous distinction. And actually, that's such a wonderful way to, sum it all up in a way, because I would love to ask you two questions. Number one is, if you had to, and this is the first one, I'm just thinking it on. I mean, I realize that for the first 22, I haven't asked that question. I'd love to ask it. If you sum it all up for us, the sort of 30 minutes into one word, what would that one word be?
30 minutes into one word. Somehow yes comes to mind, even though we've been talking all about no. Being in your presence makes me want to say yes. Because when the fact that you share with me that's your default makes me think, well, what have you missed by saying no? What if there's more adventures for you? How could you be more like Alina? Yes is coming to mind.
Fabulous. So this is going to be a yes, that's the one word. And it's interesting you say that because I almost feel compelled to say you really inspire me. And because no is such a challenge, I have the similar reaction or, responses like, oh, I want to be more like Carolyn. I'm going to learn to say more no. So that would be a beautiful dance. Good. And my second question to you was, if the audience wanted to find you, what would be the best place to find you?
I'm easy to find on Instagram, on Facebook, Carolyn Mahboubi Coach, on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is my main platform. But the best way to benefit from my work is to go on my website. I have a section called Journal, and there is articles that I've written about all the things that we've talked about today. Lots of articles on how to support young adults today. And then my newsletter, if you're called to sign up for it, will get you those articles to your mailbox directly, your inbox.
Fabulous. So all of that's fantastic. And I think for me, one of the other things that I'm not sure I mentioned before, but all of these LinkedIn Lives, which is a project of 2024, have now been all gathered on that YouTube account, which it's been called Audacious Alina. So please do, if you miss it, it's obviously all on LinkedIn, but it can also be found there.
Awesome. So good to talk to you, Alina.
So good to talk to you. It's been such a delight, Carolyn. Oh, I could talk to you forever, but thank you for making the space and the time for me, and then really looking forward to seeing you soon.
Same. Thank you.
Thank you.